Elias missed the sharp crack of gunfire, the smell of gunpowder, the satisfying thud of a bullet hitting its mark. It had been years since the accident, years since he'd last held a rifle, years filled with quiet frustration. But today, that changed. He walked towards Hank's Guns, the local gun shop, a place he'd driven past 100 times, always hesitating. Today, he was determined. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, announcing his arrival. The shop was smaller than he imagined, packed with rifles, shotguns, and handguns displayed on racks and behind glass counters. A few customers browsed, their faces serious and focused. Elias paused, taking a deep breath. The scent of gun oil and metal filled his nostrils, a familiar and comforting aroma. He scanned the rows of weapons, his eyes searching for something that felt right. He wasn't looking for a hunting rifle or a tactical weapon. He wanted something that would allow him to reconnect with the skill he thought he'd lost forever. He wanted to feel like Elias, the marksman, again. Despite his prosthetic arm, he felt a surge of excitement. This wasn't just about guns, it was about reclaiming a part of himself, a passion that had been sidelined by circumstance. He saw himself not as disabled, but as someone who needed to adapt. Hank's Guns was the first step on that path. He hoped they'd understand. The sheer variety of firearms was almost overwhelming. Elias walked slowly along the display cases, his eyes darting from one rifle to the next. He ran his good hand lightly over the cool steel of a shotgun, feeling the weight and balance. Each weapon seemed to hum with potential, with the promise of controlled power. He noticed a bolt-action rifle with a dark wood stock. It looked sturdy and reliable, but something about it didn't quite click. Then, further down, he saw it, a .22 caliber target rifle with a heavy barrel and adjustable sights. It was smaller and lighter than the others, but its precision-engineered components spoke of accuracy and control. A smile touched his lips. This was more like it. He pictured himself at the range, carefully lining up the sights, squeezing the trigger, and watching the bullet find its mark. He imagined the satisfaction of mastering this weapon, of proving to himself that he could still compete, even with his disability. He glanced around, looking for someone to assist him. A man in a plaid shirt and a baseball cap was helping another customer examine a handgun. Elias took another deep breath, steeling himself. He knew he would have to explain his situation, to convince them that he was serious. He just hoped they would give him a chance. The anticipation was building, mixed with a healthy dose of nervousness. This was it. As Elias approached the counter, the man in the plaid shirt finally looked up. It was Hank, the owner, a mountain of a man with a thick neck and a permanent squint. His eyes, the color of weathered steel, sized Elias up in an instant. It wasn't a friendly assessment. Hank's gaze lingered on Elias's prosthetic arm. A flicker of something unreadable, pity, perhaps, or maybe just plain skepticism, crossed his face. He didn't say hello, didn't offer assistance. He just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Elias cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he began, trying to project confidence despite the sudden wave of self-consciousness that washed over him. "I was interested in taking a look at that .22 target rifle over there." He gestured towards the display case. Hank grunted, not bothering to move. "You planning on shooting it, one hand?" His tone was laced with doubt, bordering on mockery. Elias felt his cheeks flush. He hadn't even said anything about his disability, yet Hank had immediately zeroed in on it, using it as a basis for judgment. The initial excitement he'd felt began to dissipate, replaced by a cold knot of apprehension. He knew this wouldn't be easy. The battle had begun, and it wasn't with a target, but with prejudice. Hank's unspoken assumptions hung heavy in the air. Elias stood his ground, refusing to be intimidated. "Yes, I am," he replied, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "I'd like to test it, if that's possible. I understand if you have a range." Hank raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Never seen anyone try target shooting with one arm. Waste of ammo, if you ask me. With all due respect, Elias countered, I'm not just anyone. I used to be a competitive marksman. Before the accident. He hesitated, the word hanging in the air like a shroud. I know my way around a rifle. He continued, explaining his adapted techniques. I've developed methods to compensate for my limitations. I use a specialized support and I've learned to control my breathing and trigger pull with precision. He left out the details of the modifications he was already contemplating. I'm not asking for special treatment, Elias insisted. Just a chance to see if I can still do it. To see if I can still compete. He met Hank's gaze directly, pleading with his eyes for understanding, for a sliver of belief. I'm willing to pay for the range time and ammunition, of course. He hoped his explanation, his plea, would be enough to break through Hank's wall of skepticism. He needed this chance. Hank let out a harsh, barking laugh. Competitive marksman, huh? With one arm. That's a good one. He shook his head, his eyes filled with derision. Look, pal, I appreciate a good story, but let's be realistic. This ain't Hollywood. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a condescending whisper. Guns are dangerous. They require skill and control. And frankly, he said, gesturing dismissively at Elias's prosthetic arm, you're missing half the equation. I'm sorry, Elias began, his voice tight with suppressed anger, but you haven't even given me a chance. And I'm not going to, Hank interrupted, his voice rising. I run a business here. I can't afford to have some accident on my range. It's a liability. He folded his arms again, his stance unyielding. Besides, he added with a smirk, I doubt you could even hit the broad side of a barn. The other customers in the shop had fallen silent, watching the exchange with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Elias felt his face burning with shame and frustration. He was being judged, not on his skill, but on his perceived limitations. His dream was slipping away, crushed by Hank's cruel words and unwavering prejudice. So, that's it? Elias asked, his voice barely a whisper. You're not even going to let me try? Hank simply shook his head. Nope. Sorry, pal. Better luck somewhere else. Elias didn't say another word. He simply turned and walked towards the door, his shoulders slumped, his head bowed. The weight of Hank's prejudice felt heavier than any physical burden. The bell above the door jingled again as he exited, the sound mocking his defeat. Outside, the bright sunlight felt harsh and unforgiving. He walked slowly to his car, each step a testament to his crushing disappointment. The dream he'd nurtured, the hope he'd clung to, lay shattered at his feet. As he drove away from Hank's guns, the humiliation began to give way to anger. A slow, simmering rage started to build within him. It wasn't just about the gun shop or the rifle. It was about all the times he'd been underestimated, all the times he'd been dismissed because of his disability. It was about proving them all wrong. The image of Hank's sneering face flashed in his mind, fueling his resentment. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white. He wouldn't let Hank's prejudice define him. He wouldn't let anyone define him. He would find a way to reclaim his passion, to prove his skill, to silence the doubters. The dream wasn't dead, it was just changing. The path ahead might be different, but he was more determined than ever to reach his goal. This wasn't the end, it was a new beginning. A beginning fueled by anger and a burning desire for vindication. Back at his house, Elias headed straight for the workshop. It was a sanctuary, a place where he could escape the world and lose himself in creation. The room was a chaotic symphony of tools, machinery, and half-finished projects. Workbenches lined the walls, cluttered with wrenches, screwdrivers, and soldering irons. Drawers overflowed with nuts, bolts, and springs of every imaginable size. A milling machine stood in one corner, its metal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Shelves were stacked high with spare parts, salvaged electronics, and boxes filled with forgotten treasures. The air hung thick with the scent of oil, metal, and sawdust, a smell that was as comforting to Elias as the scent of pine trees to others. But it wasn't just a workshop, it was a museum of Elias's past life. Trophies from his competitive shooting days lined one wall, their polished surfaces reflecting the light. Photographs showed a younger, more confident Elias, holding rifles with a steady hand and a triumphant grin. Blueprints for various inventions and modifications were scattered across a large drafting table. This was where Elias felt most at home, surrounded by the tools and memories that defined him. It was here, amidst the organized chaos, that he would find a way to turn his anger into action, to transform his frustration into innovation. This was where he would build his revenge, not with violence, but with ingenuity. This was where he would forge his own path back to the world of marksmanship. The trophies seemed to shimmer in the dim light, triggering a flood of memories. Elias remembered the crisp autumn air of the regional championships, the electric tension before the final round. He saw himself, younger and brimming with confidence, meticulously cleaning his rifle, his movements precise and deliberate. He recalled the hours spent practicing, honing his skills to a razor's edge. The countless repetitions, the meticulous adjustments, the unwavering focus. He remembered the feeling of perfect balance, the synchronized rhythm of breath and trigger pull, the satisfying thud of the bullet hitting the bullseye. Another memory surfaced, the national competition, the pressure cooker atmosphere, the weight of expectation. He remembered the intense concentration, blocking out the noise and the distractions, focusing solely on the target. He saw the slow-motion replay in his mind, the steady hand, the controlled breathing, the perfect shot that won him the gold medal. He relived the camaraderie with his teammates, the shared passion, the mutual respect. They had pushed each other to excel, celebrated each other's victories, and supported each other through defeats. They were a family, bound together by their love for the sport. These weren't just trophies, they were tangible reminders of his past glory, of the dedication and skill that had defined him. They were a testament to the man he once was, and a promise of the man he could be again. They fueled his resolve to overcome his disability and reclaim his place in the world of marksmanship. The flashback served as a powerful reminder, he wasn't starting from scratch, he was building on a foundation of years of experience and unwavering commitment. The happy memories faded, replaced by a darker one. The metallic tang of blood, the screech of metal, the blinding flash of pain. It had been a car accident, a split-second decision that changed everything. He'd been driving home from a competition, exhausted but exhilarated by his performance. A deer had darted across the road, and in his attempt to avoid it, he'd lost control of the car. The impact had been brutal. He remembered the sickening crunch of metal, the shattering of glass, and then, nothing. He woke up in a hospital bed, his body broken, his right arm mangled beyond repair. The doctors had done everything they could, but ultimately, amputation was the only option. The news had been devastating. He felt like he'd lost more than just an arm, he'd lost a part of himself, a part of his identity. The world of competitive shooting, the world he'd dedicated his life to, seemed forever out of reach. There were dark days filled with despair and self-pity. He questioned everything, wondering if he would ever find meaning in his life again. But deep down, a flicker of hope remained. He refused to let the accident define him. He wouldn't let it extinguish his passion. It was a long and arduous journey, filled with physical therapy, emotional healing, and countless setbacks. But slowly, painstakingly, he began to rebuild his life. He learned to adapt, to find new ways to do the things he loved. The accident had taken his arm, but it hadn't taken his spirit. He was still Elias, the marksman, and he was determined to prove it. With renewed purpose, Elias began to meticulously plan his next move. He couldn't just walk into another gun shop and expect a different outcome. He needed to prove his capabilities, to demonstrate his skill beyond any doubt. The answer, he realized, lay in adapting a rifle to his specific needs. He pulled out a well-worn .22 caliber rifle from his gun safe, a relic from his competitive days. It was a solid, reliable weapon, but it needed modifications to be truly effective for one-handed shooting. He spent hours sketching designs, brainstorming ideas, and experimenting with different materials. He envisioned a pressure trigger system that would allow him to fire the rifle with minimal hand movement. He planned to modify the stock to provide better stability and control. He considered adding a counterweight to improve balance. The workshop became his laboratory, his sanctuary. He worked tirelessly, fueled by a burning desire for vindication. Each adjustment, each modification, was a step towards silencing Hank's doubts and reclaiming his lost passion. He wasn't just building a rifle, he was building a statement. He was crafting a tool that would empower him to overcome his limitations and prove his worth. The frustration he felt at Hank's guns was now channeled into focused energy, driving him to create something truly exceptional. This rifle would be his voice, his testament, his ultimate answer to prejudice. The most intricate modification was the pressure trigger system. Elias designed a small, rectangular pad that replaced the traditional trigger. This pad was connected to a series of levers and linkages that, with a gentle push from his shoulder, would activate the firing mechanism. The sensitivity was adjustable, allowing him to fine-tune the trigger pull to his exact preference. He crafted a specialized stock from laminated wood, shaping it to fit snugly against his shoulder and chest. The stock extended further back than a standard rifle stock, providing extra stability and allowing him to maintain a consistent cheek weld. A series of adjustable straps and buckles secured the rifle to his body, freeing up his one hand to focus solely on aiming. Elias also added a custom-made cheek rest that was perfectly contoured to his face. This ensured proper alignment with the sights, minimizing parallax and maximizing accuracy. He meticulously polished the bore of the rifle, smoothing out any imperfections that could affect bullet trajectory. A small, lightweight bipod was attached to the fore end, providing additional support when shooting from a prone position. He even added a small spirit level to the top of the receiver, helping him to maintain a perfectly level hold. Every modification was carefully considered and meticulously executed, transforming the rifle into a personalized extension of his own body. It wasn't just a firearm, it was a masterpiece of engineering and adaptation. With the rifle complete, Elias needed to master it. He couldn't just rely on his past skills, he had to adapt to the new weapon, to the pressure trigger, to the modified stock. He found a secluded spot in the countryside, a place where he could practice in secret, undisturbed by prying eyes. He set up a target range, carefully measuring the distance, ensuring a safe backstop. He spent hours experimenting with different stances, adjusting the straps and buckles, fine-tuning his breathing and trigger pull. The pressure trigger required a delicate touch, a subtle shift of weight that would release the shot with pinpoint accuracy. At first, his shots were erratic, scattered around the target. But slowly, steadily, his accuracy improved. He learned to feel the rhythm of the weapon, to anticipate the recoil, to trust his instincts. He practiced in all weather conditions, rain or shine, pushing himself to the limit. As the days turned into weeks, Elias transformed. He regained his confidence, his focus, his sense of purpose. The rifle became an extension of his own body, an instrument of precision and control. He wasn't just a disabled man, he was a marksman again, a master of his craft. He knew the day was coming when he would return to Hank's guns. He didn't know exactly what he would do, but he knew he had to prove himself, to show Hank and everyone else that he was more than just his disability. He was ready. The rifle was ready. The time was coming. The day arrived, clear and cold. Elias woke before dawn, his heart pounding in his chest. He went through his usual routine, but there was an undercurrent of nervous energy that he couldn't shake. He double-checked his gear, making sure everything was in perfect working order. He carefully strapped the modified rifle to his body, concealing it beneath a long coat. The weight of the weapon felt reassuring, a symbol of his determination and his skill. He looked at himself in the mirror, his face grim, his eyes filled with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. He still wasn't sure what he would do when he got to Hank's guns. Part of him wanted revenge, to humiliate Hank in front of everyone, to make him eat his words. But another part of him simply wanted to demonstrate his abilities, to prove that he was worthy of respect, regardless of his disability. He put on the mask, a plain, black ski mask that concealed his identity. It was a practical measure, to avoid unwanted attention, but it also added an element of mystery, of anonymity. He wanted people to judge him on his skill, not on his appearance or his past. As he drove towards Hank's guns, the tension mounted. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. He replayed the scene in his mind, visualizing different scenarios, preparing himself for any eventuality. He knew this was a defining moment, a chance to reclaim his pride and silence his doubters. But was he seeking justice, or merely seeking validation? Even he wasn't entirely sure. The line between demonstration and revenge had blurred. The bell above the door jingled again, announcing his arrival. This time, however, the atmosphere was different. The black ski mask completely obscured his face, lending him an air of anonymity and quiet menace. He walked with a deliberate, confident stride, his eyes scanning the room, taking in every detail. Hank was behind the counter, talking to a customer. He glanced up as Elias entered, his expression unreadable. There was a flicker of recognition, perhaps, but he couldn't be sure. The other customers paused in their browsing, their eyes drawn to the masked figure. Elias moved to the center of the shop, his presence radiating an aura of power and mystery. The long coat concealed the modified rifle, but its outline was subtly visible, hinting at the weapon hidden beneath. The silence in the shop was palpable, broken only by the soft hum of the fluorescent lights. He stood there for a moment, allowing the tension to build, letting his presence speak for itself. He wanted everyone to know that something was about to happen, that the rules were about to change. He was no longer the vulnerable, disabled man who had been turned away weeks ago. He was someone else, someone to be reckoned with. The mask wasn't just concealing his identity, it was amplifying his message. It was a symbol of his transformation, his defiance, his unwavering determination. He was ready to face Hank, to face the world, on his own terms. Hank, initially unfazed by the masked man's entrance, leaned against the counter, arms crossed. He'd seen all sorts walk through his doors. But as Elias moved closer, something shifted in Hank's demeanor. He noticed the subtle bulge beneath the long coat, the telltale outline of a rifle stock. His eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on the concealed weapon. The confident stride, the unwavering stare behind the mask, the palpable tension in the air, it all added up to something he couldn't quite dismiss. A seed of unease began to sprout in his gut. He straightened up, his arms dropping to his sides. He subtly moved his hand closer to the handgun tucked beneath the counter. The other customer, sensing the change in atmosphere, discreetly backed away. Hank's dismissive attitude began to crumble, replaced by a growing sense of apprehension. He recognized the rigid set of the masked man's shoulders, the focused intensity in his eyes. This wasn't some ordinary troublemaker, this was someone with a purpose, someone who was prepared to act. The modified rifle, hidden but undeniably present, was a clear signal. This wasn't just about browsing or making idle threats. This was about something more, something personal. Hank realized he had underestimated this individual, and the consequences could be far more serious than he had imagined. The smirk that usually played on his lips vanished, replaced by a look of wary concern. He swallowed hard, his hand still hovering near the gun beneath the counter. He was no longer in control. Elias broke the silence, his voice muffled but clear through the mask. "I'd like to use the firing range." His words were devoid of emotion, a simple statement of intent. Hank's eyes darted around, assessing the situation. "I don't think that's a good idea," he said, his voice tight. "We have a policy about masked individuals." It was a weak excuse, and they both knew it. "I'm willing to pay," Elias countered, ignoring the veiled threat. He reached into his pocket and placed a stack of bills on the counter. For the range, time and ammunition. Look, pal, Hank said, his voice rising slightly, I don't know what you're planning, but this is my business. I can't let you just waltz in here with a concealed weapon and start shooting. I'm not planning anything, Elias replied, his voice unwavering. I simply want to use the range. I'm a paying customer. He gestured towards the back of the shop. Unless you have something to hide. Hank bristled at the implication. That's it, he said, his hand inching closer to the gun beneath the counter. I'm calling the police. Elias didn't flinch. That's your choice. He remained standing in the center of the shop, his presence unyielding, his gaze fixed on Hank. He wasn't backing down. He had come too far to be deterred by empty threats. He was here to prove a point, and he wouldn't leave until he had done so. The other customers watched in stunned silence, unsure of what was about to happen. The air crackled with tension, the standoff reaching a critical point. Ignoring Hank's threat, Elias slowly unbuttoned his coat, revealing the modified rifle strapped to his body. The weapon, with its custom stock and pressure trigger, looked both menacing and elegant. He moved with practiced ease, detaching the rifle and adjusting the straps to fit comfortably against his shoulder. Hank's hand tightened around the gun beneath the counter, his knuckles white. He watched Elias with a mixture of fear and fascination, unsure of what to expect. The other customers were frozen in place, their eyes wide with apprehension. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the soft clicks and whirs of the rifle's mechanisms. Elias turned towards the firing range, his movements deliberate and controlled. He raised the rifle to his shoulder, his one hand gripping the fore-end, his cheek resting against the custom cheek rest. He took a deep breath, focusing his mind, blocking out the noise and the distractions. He could feel Hank's gaze burning into his back, but he refused to be intimidated. He was here to prove a point, and he wouldn't let anything stand in his way. He lined up the sights, his eyes fixed on the target downrange. He felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the heightened sense of awareness, the unwavering focus that had defined his career as a marksman. He was ready. It was time to show them what he could do. The silence stretched, a taut string about to snap. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Everyone was waiting, holding their breath, wondering what would happen next. With a subtle shift of his weight, Elias activated the pressure trigger. The rifle recoiled slightly against his shoulder, and a loud crack echoed through the shop. A split second later, a neat hole appeared in the center of the target downrange. He didn't pause, didn't break his concentration. He adjusted his stance slightly, took another deep breath, and activated the trigger again. Another shot rang out, followed by another hole appearing just beside the first. He fired a third shot, then a fourth, then a fifth. Each shot was precise, each shot was deliberate, each shot was a testament to his skill and his dedication. The bullets clustered together in a tight group, forming a pattern that was almost impossibly perfect. The other customers gasped in amazement, their apprehension replaced by awe. Even Hank, his hand still hovering near his gun, couldn't help but be impressed. He had never seen anything like it. The masked man was a marksman of extraordinary skill, capable of feats that defied logic and defied expectations. Elias lowered the rifle, his breathing steady, his eyes focused. He had proven his point. He had silenced the doubts. He had demonstrated his abilities beyond any question. He had shown them all that he was more than just his disability. He was Elias, the marksman, and he was back. The silence in the shop was now filled with a new kind of tension, a tension of respect, of admiration, of disbelief. The balance of power had shifted completely. Hank, still reeling from the display of skill, cautiously approached the target. The other customers followed, drawn in by a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. As they got closer, their expressions changed from awe to astonishment. The target was riddled with holes, but it wasn't just the number of shots that was impressive, it was the precision. 5 bullets had pierced the target, forming a cluster that could be covered with a quarter. The edges of the holes were clean and sharp, indicating a perfect trajectory and consistent velocity. Close-up shots revealed the intricate detail of the bullet holes. The paper was torn in a starburst pattern, a testament to the force and accuracy of the impact. Small fragments of lead were embedded in the surrounding paper, further highlighting the power of the shots. One customer, a seasoned hunter, examined the target with a magnifying glass. He shook his head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like it," he said, his voice hushed with reverence. "Even with 2 hands, I couldn't shoot that accurately." Another customer, a former military sniper, nodded in agreement. "That's world-class marksmanship," he said. "That's the kind of skill you only see in the special forces." The target spoke for itself. It was a visual representation of Elias's skill, his dedication, his unwavering determination. It was a tangible proof that he was more than capable, more than worthy, more than just his disability. It was the ultimate answer to Hank's prejudice, the definitive silencing of all doubts. The precision of the shots was undeniable, the evidence irrefutable. Elias had proven his capabilities beyond any shadow of a doubt. Hank stared at the target, his mouth agape, his eyes wide with disbelief. The prejudice that had clouded his judgment, the skepticism that had fueled his mockery, all of it shattered into a million pieces. He had been so wrong, so quick to judge, so blinded by his own narrow-mindedness. He remembered his words, his dismissive gestures, his condescending tone. He cringed at the memory of his arrogance, his unwavering belief that he knew best. He had underestimated Elias, had dismissed him as incapable, had denied him the chance to prove himself. Now, faced with irrefutable evidence of Elias's skill, Hank was forced to confront his own prejudice. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow. He had allowed his biases to cloud his judgment, to prevent him from seeing the truth. He had judged a book by its cover, and he had been profoundly wrong. The shock of recognition washed over him, a wave of shame and regret. He had treated Elias unfairly, had denied him the respect he deserved. He had allowed his preconceived notions to dictate his actions, and he had missed out on the opportunity to witness something truly extraordinary. He looked at Elias, still standing calmly by the firing line, and saw him in a new light. He no longer saw a disabled man, he saw a marksman, a master, a force to be reckoned with. He saw someone who had overcome adversity, who had defied expectations, who had proven his worth against all odds. Hank's worldview was completely shaken. He knew, in that instant, that he had a lot to learn. Elias slowly reached up and pulled the mask from his face. The silence in the shop deepened, all eyes fixed on him. He met Hank's gaze directly, his expression resolute. "Do you recognize me now?" he asked, his voice clear and steady, devoid of anger or triumph. Hank's eyes widened in recognition. "Elias." He stammered, the name barely a whisper. "Yes, Elias," he confirmed. "The man you refused to let test a rifle. The man you judged based on his disability." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "I came back to show you that you were wrong." He continued, his voice gaining strength. "You humiliated me, Hank. You dismissed my skills, you questioned my abilities, you denied me the chance to pursue my passion. You made me feel like I was less than a man." He gestured towards the modified rifle. "This isn't just a weapon, it's a symbol of my resilience, my determination, my refusal to be defined by my limitations." He looked at the other customers, his gaze sweeping across their faces. "I hope this has taught you all a lesson. Never underestimate anyone. Never judge a book by its cover. And never let prejudice cloud your judgment." He turned back to Hank, his eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "I didn't come back for revenge. I came back for respect. I came back to prove that I am still Elias, the marksman. And I think I've done that." The air crackled with unspoken emotion, the tension of the moment palpable. The silence hung heavy, waiting for Hank's response. Hank hung his head, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked up at Elias, his eyes filled with genuine remorse. "Elias," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion, I don't know what to say." He took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "I was wrong. You're right. I judged you unfairly. I let my own ignorance cloud my judgment." He paused, searching for the courage to continue. "I am truly sorry." He extended his hand towards Elias, his expression sincere. "I was a fool. You've shown me that. I offer you my deepest apologies, and my respect." His voice cracked with emotion. I hope you can forgive me." He added, "That was some amazing shooting, by the way. I've never seen anyone handle a rifle like that, with one arm or two." The other customers watched in silence, witnessing the transformation of a man who had been so quick to judge, so confident in his own superiority. They saw a humbled Hank, a man who had been forced to confront his own prejudice and acknowledge his mistakes. The tension in the shop began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of resolution. The standoff was over. The battle had been won, not with violence, but with skill, determination, and the power of forgiveness. Elias had not only proven his abilities, but he had also opened Hank's eyes, changing him for the better. The atmosphere shifted, from one of hostility to one of reconciliation. A new chapter was beginning. Elias looked at Hank's outstretched hand, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He saw the genuine remorse, the sincerity in his apology. He knew that Hank's words were not just empty platitudes, they were a heartfelt acknowledgement of his mistake. He reached out and shook Hank's hand, his grip firm but gentle. "I accept your apology," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I didn't come here for revenge. I simply wanted to be recognized, to be given a chance to pursue my passion." He continued, "All I wanted was the opportunity to test a rifle, to prove to myself and to others that I am still capable, that my disability doesn't define me." He paused, a hint of emotion in his voice. "I just wanted to feel like Elias, the marksman, again." He added, "I hope that from now on, you'll treat everyone with the respect they deserve, regardless of their appearance or their limitations." He smiled slightly. "And maybe," he said, "you could let me use the range from time to time. I'm always looking for a place to practice." His words were not a demand, but a simple request, a gesture of goodwill. He had achieved what he had set out to do. He had proven his abilities, he had silenced the doubters, and he had opened Hank's eyes to the injustice of prejudice. He didn't need revenge, he simply needed recognition and the chance to pursue his passion. He had found both. The long journey had finally reached its end. As Elias and Hank shook hands, a ripple of applause spread through the shop. The other customers, who had been silent observers throughout the tense standoff, began to clap, their faces filled with admiration and respect. They had witnessed a remarkable transformation, a powerful demonstration of resilience and skill. They had seen Elias overcome adversity, defy expectations, and silence prejudice. They were inspired by his unwavering determination, his refusal to be defined by his limitations. The applause grew louder, filling the shop with a resounding ovation. It was a tribute to Elias's accomplishments, a celebration of his spirit, and a recognition of the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. One woman, wiping tears from her eyes, approached Elias. "That was incredible," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You've inspired me to never give up on my own dreams." Another man, a former veteran, shook Elias's hand. "Thank you," he said. "You've shown me that anything is possible, no matter what challenges we face." The applause was more than just a gesture of appreciation, it was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of prejudice and adversity, the human spirit can triumph. Elias's journey had touched them all, reminding them of the importance of perseverance, determination, and the power of believing in oneself. He had not only proven his own abilities, but he had also inspired others to strive for greatness, to overcome their own obstacles, and to never let anyone tell them what they cannot do. The applause was a testament to his enduring legacy. Elias gathered his gear, a sense of peace washing over him. He had come to Hank's gun seeking vindication, but he was leaving with something far more valuable: respect, recognition, and a renewed sense of hope. He shook Hank's hand again, a genuine smile on his face. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate the apology, and the opportunity." He turned to the other customers, offering a nod of gratitude. "Thank you all for your support," he said. "It means a lot to me." As he walked towards the door, the applause followed him, a warm and comforting sound. He stepped outside into the bright sunlight, feeling a sense of lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The weight of prejudice, the burden of doubt, had been lifted from his shoulders. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't bitter or resentful. He had proven his point, he had silenced the doubters, and he had inspired others to believe in themselves. He had reclaimed his passion, and he had found a new sense of purpose. The bell above the door jingled as he exited, the sound now a joyful chime, a celebration of his victory. He walked to his car, his head held high, his heart filled with hope. The future was uncertain, but he was ready to face it, armed with his skill, his determination, and the knowledge that he could overcome any obstacle. He knew that he would continue to pursue his passion, to hone his skills, and to inspire others along the way. The journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. The final scene shows Elias back at his private range, the sun setting behind him, casting long shadows across the field. He's wearing his familiar shooting gear, the modified rifle strapped securely to his body. He moves with a fluid grace, his movements precise and deliberate. He sets up the target, carefully measuring the distance, ensuring a safe backstop. He takes a deep breath, focusing his mind, blocking out the noise and the distractions. He raises the rifle to his shoulder, his one hand gripping the forend, his cheek resting against the custom cheek rest. He lines up the sights, his eyes fixed on the target downrange. He feels the familiar surge of adrenaline, the heightened sense of awareness, the unwavering focus that had defined his career as a marksman. He activates the pressure trigger. The rifle recoils slightly against his shoulder, and a loud crack echoes through the countryside. A split second later, a neat hole appears in the center of the target. He smiles, a genuine expression of joy and satisfaction. He fires another shot, then another, then another. Each shot is precise, each shot is deliberate, each shot is a testament to his skill and his dedication. He's not just practicing, he's celebrating, he's expressing himself, he's finding joy and purpose in his adapted sport. He's Elias, the marksman, and he's back where he belongs. He's found a way to adapt and continue pursuing his passion. The setting sun paints the sky with vibrant colors, a symbol of hope and renewal. The final shot rings out, a triumphant declaration of his enduring spirit. The journey continues. Elias's story is a powerful reminder that adversity can be overcome, that limitations can be challenged, and that societal perceptions of disability can be transformed. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the power of resilience, and the importance of believing in oneself. He faced prejudice, skepticism, and doubt, but he refused to let those negative forces define him. He channeled his anger and frustration into ingenuity, adapting his skills and his equipment to meet his specific needs. He didn't ask for special treatment, he simply asked for a chance to prove himself. His journey highlights the importance of challenging societal perceptions of disability. Too often, people with disabilities are underestimated, their abilities dismissed, their potential ignored. Elias's story demonstrates that disability is not a barrier to success, it is simply a different way of navigating the world. His story also underscores the importance of inclusivity and acceptance. By creating a more inclusive society, we can empower people with disabilities to reach their full potential, to contribute their talents and skills, and to enrich our communities. Elias's legacy extends far beyond the world of marksmanship. He has become a symbol of hope, a beacon of inspiration, a reminder that anything is possible with determination, perseverance, and a belief in oneself. He challenged stereotypes, shattered expectations, and opened the eyes of those who had been blinded by prejudice. He showed the world that disability does not define a person, it is their spirit, their character, and their unwavering determination that truly matter. His story encourages a world where difference is celebrated and everyone has the opportunity to shine. Hank's transformation serves as a potent reminder of the dangers of judging people based on appearances. His initial assessment of Elias, based solely on his disability, was deeply flawed and ultimately led to his own humiliation. He learned a valuable lesson that day, a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his life. He realized that true skill and ability are not always readily apparent, that appearances can be deceiving, and that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their physical limitations. He vowed to never again let prejudice cloud his judgment, to never again underestimate anyone based on their appearance. He committed to being more open-minded, more accepting, and more willing to give people a chance to prove themselves. He understood that his initial actions had not only hurt Elias, but they had also reflected poorly on himself and his business. He knew that he had a responsibility to create a welcoming and inclusive environment for all customers, regardless of their background or abilities. He began to make changes in his shop, implementing policies that promoted equality and respect. He trained his employees to be more sensitive and understanding, to avoid making assumptions, and to treat every customer with dignity. He even reached out to local disability organizations, seeking advice on how to make his shop more accessible and inclusive. Hank's transformation was not just a superficial change, it was a fundamental shift in his worldview. He had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of empathy, compassion, and the power of challenging one's own biases. He became a better person, a better business owner, and a better member of his community. His story serves as a reminder that it's never too late to learn, to grow, and to change for the better. Elias's journey provides a sense of closure, not just for him, but for anyone who has ever faced prejudice, discrimination, or doubt. His story is a message of empowerment for those facing similar challenges, a reminder that they are not alone, and that they have the power to overcome any obstacle. His success is a testament to the fact that limitations are often self-imposed, that societal perceptions can be challenged, and that the human spirit is capable of extraordinary feats. He inspires others to embrace their unique abilities, to find creative solutions to their challenges, and to never give up on their dreams. He showed the world that disability is not a weakness, it is simply a different way of experiencing the world. He demonstrated that with determination, ingenuity, and a belief in oneself, anything is possible. He became a symbol of hope for those who have been marginalized, underestimated, or dismissed. His story encourages everyone to embrace their individuality, to celebrate their differences, and to never let anyone tell them what they cannot do. He empowers others to challenge the status quo, to break down barriers, and to create a more inclusive and equitable world for all. He leaves behind a legacy of resilience, determination, and unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit. His story will continue to inspire generations to come, reminding them that they have the power to overcome adversity, to challenge perceptions, and to achieve their full potential, regardless of the challenges they may face. He provides a feeling of resolution and hope for a brighter future. The final shot lingers on Elias, silhouetted against the setting sun. His figure is strong and resolute, his stance unwavering. The modified rifle is cradled in his arm, an extension of his own body. The setting sun casts a golden glow around him, illuminating his determination and highlighting his strength. He is a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of the human spirit. The image is both powerful and serene, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope can endure. The shadows lengthen, but Elias remains steadfast, his silhouette a beacon of inspiration. The scene fades to black, leaving the audience with a lasting impression of strength, courage, and the unwavering belief in oneself. The final image serves as a reminder that even when the world seems dark, the human spirit can shine brightly, illuminating the path forward. Elias, silhouetted against the setting sun, stands as a powerful symbol, a symbol of strength in the face of adversity, a symbol of determination in the pursuit of passion, and a symbol of hope for a more inclusive and equitable future. His story is complete, but his legacy lives on. He is an inspiration to us all.